Pose, 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 I do adore. Pose, 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 I do adore. Pose, 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 I do adore. What is up, awesome people of the internet? Y'all, you know what this is. We talking about the AP Top 25 poll, and this time for week 18. Y'all, the regular season is basically over now, at least for the top 25 teams. So yes, we're gonna get into the top 25 because we got a newcomer, we got some movement a little bit, and we're gonna talk about it because I know y'all gonna have some thoughts about this top 25 poll. All right, so let's get into it. So of course, at number one, we have South Carolina, who is just continuing to do their thing. They are, once again, undefeated for the regular season. Last year, they were undefeated. This year, they're undefeated. It just shows the amazing recruiting ability and also the X's and O's sort of ability for Coach Don Staley. I know there was something released the other day that had, Don Staley sort of towards the bottom in terms of being an X's and O's coach. And y'all get real. No, Don Staley is a fantastic X's and O's coach. Like you can absolutely tell that. So she is a coach that deserves all the praise that she's getting because she just is phenomenal. We will continue to see South Carolina stay undefeated for maybe the rest of the season or at least midway through the NCAA tournament because this is a team that is extremely, extremely talented. And they're talented, they're consistent, they're also very, very deep. Very, very deep. And they have a great coach. So that is just a recipe for lots of success for South Carolina. So they are still at the number one spot with a record of 29-0. All right, moving on, we have Stanford, who moved up 2 spots into the number 2 spot this week. They have a record of 26-4. And yeah, Stanford's doing their thing. Stanford is doing their thing. They have Cameron Brink. They have Kiki Irafen. They have a great coaching Tara Vanderveer. Like they're probably going to stay at that 2 spot. We saw movement because, as we know, Ohio State lost to Iowa this past week, and that helped to move Stanford up 2 spots. So they are at that 2 spot line. They are also the top of the Pac-12, which is, in my opinion, the toughest conference in the country. As we take a look at what Stanford is just continuing to do, they look good going into the Pac-12 tournament, and they look good going into the NCAA tournament. The question is, will we see any upsets for the Pac-12? I think it's likely. I think it's very likely that we will. But yeah, we'll see. We'll see what happens. All right, moving on to number 3. Now, I know y'all gonna have some stuff to say about this, so we're gonna get into it. So, and at the number 3 spot, we have Iowa with a record of 26-4. Now, about this, I will say I know there's gonna a lot of people are gonna be like, Iowa's way too high. And for those people who say that, I get it. I do get it. But we have reached a point in the season to where it's like, okay, well, who are you gonna put there? Who are you gonna put there? I still think that Ohio State is a better team than Iowa. So even though Ohio State lost, I still think they're a better team. But having Iowa at the number 3 spot, it is what it is. I get it. I get why they're still put there. But yeah. Let me know, guys, in the comments what y'all think. I know some of y'all gonna be very upset because I know people talk about all the time. There's a Iowa bias on the AP rankings, and maybe there is. I'm not totally sure. But my question to you is, if not Iowa at number 3, who are you putting in number 3? Because this past week kind of screwed up a lot of stuff because teams lost. Teams lost and they got dropped. So yeah. Who would you put at number 3 if not Iowa? And I would say, I think Iowa is a 3 or a 4 team. They could be at number 3 spot. They could be at number 4 spot. I think they are very, very tough of a team. Now, the question mark is with Molly Davis out, do they drop? That's the question because yes, Iowa is a team that is good and of course revolves around Caitlin Clark, but it's not just Caitlin Clark, it is Molly Davis as well. Molly Davis, as an injury update, guys, Molly Davis is going to be out for the Big Ten tournament, but the idea is that she will be back for the actual NCAA tournament. So that is great news for just basketball fans in general. The fact that that we will see her play one more time this season. It's not as bad as we were expecting. So yeah, I thought it would be really, really bad, especially since she rolled out in a wheelchair. But according to Lisa Bluter, Molly Davis will be back this season in the NCAA tournament, likely. All right, so let's get into number 4 spot, which is Ohio State. Again, as I said just earlier, I do still think that Ohio State is a better team than Iowa. So I personally would have just had them at that number 3 spot. But I get why they got dropped. They are still extremely talented team. And the number 4 spot, they just have a trifecta of players who just get the job done, right? You have J.C. Sheldon, you have Cody McMahon, you have Celeste Taylor, you have others who are doing their thing for Ohio State, which is what makes them very, very dangerous because it's not just, one player, it's multiple players who can go off and do their thing for this team. At number 5, we have USC, who is just continuing to roll in the Pac-12. As we know, the Pac-12 is the toughest team. So yes, they have a record, toughest conference. So yes, they have a record, USC, of 23-5. But yeah, I still feel good about them being in that number 5 spot. It's just Juju Watkins doing her thing. Juju Watkins continues to do her thing, and it is fun to see. At number 6, we have Texas, who is just still continuing to do their thing as well. They did drop 3 points from last week, but I don't think it's that big of a deal. This team is led by freshman Madison Booker, who has been doing her thing at the point guard position, a position that she wasn't planning on playing, but she has stepped in that role and has done a very good job for Texas. Because yeah, the Longhorns, they're trying to make some noise. Vic Schaefer is trying to make some noise in the NCAA tournament. They do have the Big 12 tournament that is coming up, so we'll see what they can do on that front. All right, moving down to the number 7 spot, we have UCLA, who moved up 1 spot from last week. They are 24-5 on the season. They're just continuing to roll, especially with Lauren Betts being back and just doing her thing for this team. LSU moved up 1 spot from last week. They are at that number 8 position. They are 26-4 on the season. I absolutely could see them possibly going up further in this ranking as we get into actual conference tournament play. Now for UConn, they moved up 1 spot from last week. They are at that number 9 spot with a record of 26-5. NC State is up 2 spots from last week at that number 10 spot with a record of 25-5. And now, if you're wondering, why are all these teams just moving up incrementally? Well, they're moving up because Virginia Tech moved down. Virginia Tech dropped like a rock. They dropped 6 points from last week to this week, and now they are resting at that number 11 spot. Now, they lost to Virginia, and that's why they got dropped. They lost to Virginia 75-80 this past week, and that was a huge surpriser, shocker of a loss. However, I don't think that Virginia Tech should have been dropped that much. I really don't think they should have been dropped that much, and the reason why I say that is because the reason why they lost is because Elizabeth Kitley was out. Elizabeth Kitley got hurt, and she was a massive loss for Virginia Tech in that game and contributed to them losing, right? So she was injured with 4 minutes left to go in the second half, and you know, it was an injury that looks really, really bad. So we'll see what happens. We really will see. It was a non-contact injury. It looked like, in my opinion, it was a non-contact injury. And so we'll see what happens with Elizabeth Kitley. I think it's possible that the people who were voting, maybe they thought that Elizabeth Kitley was sort of down for the count for this season and that she wasn't going to return, and that's why they dropped them like a rock. But like I that's the reason why Virginia Tech lost, is because of Elizabeth Kitley. She is like, if she's not playing for this team, that is a absolute huge loss going forward. If she's not able to go, again, prayers for her. I hope she's able to come back soon-ish for the team. But yeah, this being a loss is going to be absolutely huge. She's so far averaging 22.8 points a game, 11.4 rebounds a game, 2.1 blocks a game. She's a big deal for Virginia Tech, and she is a player that they rely on. So having her possibly not play for the remainder of the season, it's a tough battle. It's a tough battle. All right, moving on to Indiana, who moved up 2 spots from last week. They are at that number 12 spot. Now, regarding Indiana, they have an injury thing for themselves as well, right? When you take a look at this Indiana team, they look good. But similarly to Virginia Tech, for Indiana, they have a post player that they heavily, heavily rely on, and her name is Mackenzie Holmes. She is the engine for this team, and she got hurt in their game this past weekend, and yeah, it's going to be tough. She got hurt in the third quarter. Yes, they did end up still getting the dub, but still, it's a huge loss. So far, Mackenzie is averaging 20.7 points a game and 7.1 rebounds a game this season. And, she is shooting 67% from the field, which is the 6th best in Division I. And she's just tough. She's just absolutely tough. So if she is not able to go for Indiana, that is a huge, huge, huge loss for this team. So prayers that she will be able to come back, though it's not looking good. Her injury is not looking good. All right, moving on to Oregon State, who had a player return. Beers was able to return for Oregon State this past weekend, which is huge for this team, and will absolutely help them going forward. Because she is their engine as well. Lots of injuries, man, lots of injuries. Oregon State is 23-6 on the season. And we'll see what they can do in the Pac-12 tournament, because that really is going to be the proving ground on if they move up or if they stay where they're at the number 13 spot. And going to number 14, we have Notre Dame. Notre Dame is moved up 3 spots from last week. They just look good. They just look good. And y'all, if y'all didn't see it, I made a video specifically about Hannah Hidalgo and how great she's been. So if you haven't watched that video, make sure to watch it, because know the name Hannah Hidalgo. She's very, very talented. All right, we're gonna move on down a little bit to talk about the mid-major darlings of Gonzaga. Gonzaga is still continuing to do their thing in the West Coast Conference. They are 29-2 on the season, and they're just rolling. They're just continuing to roll. They will likely stay around that 15 ranked mark going into the tournament. Next up, we have those Big 12 women of K-State who dropped down 1 spot from last week. Not a big deal. They are 24-6 on the season. And we have more Big 12. Baylor has moved up 1 spot, or 4 spots from last week. They've gotten some good wins recently, and they are 23-6 on the season at that number 17 spot. Moving down to Colorado, Colorado has dropped down 5 spots. And if you're like, wow, why did they drop down so far? Well, it's because they lost. They lost against Washington State, 63-72. They are 21-8 on the season. And 21-8. and number 18. It just shows how tough the Pac-12 really is. So yeah, a thing to note is that Jalen Sherrod is a tough player who played with black eyes in the last game. Jalen Sherrod is tough. She is tough. Like, don't, when you're looking at some of the toughest players in the country, Jalen Sherrod should be on that list. She's a player who endured a lot of pain to play this past weekend. Even though they lost, Colorado is still a very, very good team. Washington State is also still a really good team as well. So, it is what it is. I'm not that worried about Colorado, though they have been sort of on a downward spiral a bit. I don't think they might make much noise in the Pac-12 tournament. But we'll see. We'll see though. We'll see if they're able to turn it around. We'll see what Coach J.R. Payne decides to do from here on out. But yeah, Colorado at number 18. Now let's go back to the Big 12 and talk about Oklahoma, the best team in the Big 12 conference. They have a record of 21-8 on the season, and they just lost to Kansas, so they dropped down one spot. All right, on to Syracuse, who dropped down one spot as well. They lost to NC State, and they have a record of 23-6. Syracuse is good, and that game against NC State was very winnable for the Syracuse team. They couldn't get it done, but they're still very, very talented. Watch out for them in the ACC tournament. Going to 21, we have Creighton, who is doing their thing in the Big East as well. We'll see what they're able to do in the Big East tournament. I mean, it is basically UConn's to win, but if Creighton can get the upset, that would be pretty phenomenal. All right, moving on to number 22, we have Utah, who has dropped as well. Utah has a record of 21-9 on the season. They're a good team, but they can get some ugly losses here and there. UNLV is at the number 23 spot with a record of 26-2. And we have Louisville, who dropped 2 spots from last week with a record of 23-8. They did lose to Notre Dame. Notre Dame, really, really beat Louisville pretty badly recently. So we end with a very, very feel-good story with Fairfield making their debut at number 25, y'all. They are 26-1 on the season. Again, they only lost one game, which was a non-conference game. They have been undefeated in conference play. They wanted to make the top 25, so they put together a resume because why not? And their resume was accepted, and they made it to the top 25 spot. Should they actually be there? Probably not. But I love it as a story. I love it as a feel-good story to be like, hey, if you think you deserve something, if you think you deserve a position that you're not at yet, update your resume. And that's what Fairfield did. And Fairfield is now the 25th team in the AP poll. When we look at some of the others who got votes, we have Princeton, Michigan State, West Virginia, Mississippi, Duke, Columbia, North Carolina, Richmond, Kansas, Toledo, Jackson State, and Iowa State. But also Columbia should also be in the talking as well. All right, so that is what happened for this past week, guys. I do appreciate y'all for watching the video. Let me know where you would put certain teams in the top 25. I think this past week just threw a huge wrench in a lot of stuff because we had teams get got. So yeah, my question to you guys is, what do you expect to see coming up for the rankings, especially as we head into conference play? Guys, I will be back for more videos all throughout the week, letting you all know what's going on in the world of women's college basketball as we continue on into March Madness. So be tuned in to what's going on. Hit that like button if you can. Please hit that subscribe button as well. Yesterday, I released a video talking about all things you needed to know about conference tournament play. So if you have not watched that video, make sure to watch it. It is very educational, and it talks about every single 32 conference that is in the women's game. It's a huge deep dive. So if y'all are interested in that, if y'all appreciate that, let me know. Yeah, until next time, guys. Bye-bye.